Welcome back to Coruscant Radio Underground, where we talk about everything Star Wars. I'm Andrew. I'm here tonight with Merisha.
Hello.
And our very special guest, Dominic Pace.
Hey guys, how are you? I hope all is well, and hello to all your listeners.
Yep. So we're very, very glad to have you on. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we just wanted to chat with you a little bit. And, of course, getting to play a Star Wars character. I mean, I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan. And, we talk about it all the time because we're also big Tolkien fans. And, and Tolkien was kind of the one who I blame Tolkien for my love to know everything about every character. Mm-hmm. And I think that so many of us have, then latched onto Star Wars and we kind of want the same thing. And so we want to know about all these characters standing in the corner in the cantina and, the pilots. And we just kind of, as Star Wars fans, demand a story for everybody.
Absolutely. I always knew about that fascination. I mean, we can go back to the original Bounty Hunters to where you had Zuckuss and Forlom pretty much standing on the bridge there, not doing much. Uh-huh. And, I mean, those guys sort of became the OGs. Right. I guess, a credit to Tolkien, a credit to Lucas, and, of course, Lucas's team.
Yep.
I think what really makes and separates, the men and the women from the girls and boys is basically the amount of detail that they give to every character, and that starts from the outside in. The amount of depth that they put, whether it's with prosthetics, whether it is with the outfits and uniforms, so many great stories that you hear from the original trilogy. But I for those who don't know, I've been in this business for 20 plus years. I have over 100 television, film and television credits. This has just been beyond words in terms of the reception to where I think COVID had a lot to do with it. But still, I think it's just the passion of the Star Wars fan base that really has blown me away the last couple of years, ever since I announced. And just so the fans know, a lot of times, sometimes I'll go on a show, somebody say, star of The Mandalorian, Dominic Pace. I said, please. I said, you don't understand. I said, this is not, none of this tour, none of these appearances has ever been about, sort of being anything bigger than what these special side characters are. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's less than 1 minute screen time. But somehow, the fans seem to latch on, like you said, with these characters, with Tolkien's characters, maybe some in the Marvel universe, but not even Marvel. I feel like it's just the A-team, and that's pretty much it, even in terms of figures.
Right.
But, the one thing I always say, I think the best comparison is when we were kids, if you had a Han Solo, you had a Walrus Man. If you had a Princess Leia, you had a Hammerhead. And the same thing with those guys. I mean, they were literally sitting at the bar. I mean, they weren't even involved in the action. I mean, I was fortunate to have a battle. But it just has been so humbling. I've been so grateful because as in many businesses, my business got shot down about 75%. And, we only had so many opportunities. I've been fortunate to be a working actor. But when things aren't completely up and running, similar to a lot of the small businesses, which I was so passionate to help out because I could relate as a working character actor where, again, you're not a big conglomerate and you're not going to get through this, this COVID time without the help of others. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for the whole perfect storm, again, of side characters being amazing and also the reception of the Star Wars fan base there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Andrew is self-employed. He works as a real estate appraiser, and I homeschool our kids. So, 2020 was also, all of a sudden, people weren't buying houses and weren't selling houses and didn't want you in their houses,
right.
And so, it's something we really appreciate, people going out of their way to help, small businesses, because last year, the work that we got just from individuals call and be like, hey, can you come appraise my house? That paid our bills last year. And without there being just, and usually it's banks, usually he works, but if it weren't just for individuals, just, picking up the phone and giving out a phone call, as one of the little guys, we really appreciate you, being one of those people going out of your way to do things to help small businesses. So
I appreciate you. It's funny because I don't have too many tattoos. I'm not a tattoo guy, but I actually got a tattoo of the character. And you make me think of a point there to where there's a lot of parallels from my life and also your lives that are in relation to the bounty hunters. The question is maybe why are bounty hunters so appealing? So we can look at them and say, oh, wow, well, they look really cool from the outside. But also to me, on top of the relationships, the iconic relationships in the Star Wars universe, like father and son, of course, Luke and Vader, a brother and brother, in my opinion, the parallels of Anakin and Obi-Wan, to where, brothers have gone their own separate ways. There's so many different dynamics in the universe, which again, make Star Wars stand out from other franchises. But the one thing for me is that bounty hunters in particular, I feel like represent the working class man and woman, the single mother trying to just get by and trying to survive. And for me, when I first heard that, some businesses are essential, but other businesses are non-essential, that the very core of this country, I think what makes our country great is the fact that you have these mom and pops who get up every morning and get it done themselves. And for me, I was in a position, unlike, a lot of the A-listers, to where, again, I mean, they've worked hard and they have demanded their rate to where they go to a store comes to them and they say, okay, well, it's going to be X amount of dollars for me to show up. I didn't have that clout, but it worked out in such a beautiful way to where I said, hey, I don't want anything up front. I said, if anything, let me give you guys 15%. I don't need anything at all. The only thing is, if you can put me up at a night at a hotel the night before, something modest in the Midwest, I greatly appreciate it. My son and I will be traveling. And it just worked out so well to I was able to raise over $25,000 for over 50 different comic book stores throughout the country there. So I can't tell you how grateful I am. And it was just sort of a yin and a yang in terms of them helping me and sort of putting Gekko to a higher stratosphere now, to where the fans created a comic for this year's tour. And also helping them as well through those difficult times.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so tell us about, like, I know you don't want to give us spoilers, but what do you have to tell us about this comic project?
Sure. It's an interesting story. It's a little slightly sad in that Marvel Comics, the head of a very popular comic right now called Star Wars Bounty Hunters, loved the character. His name is Ethan Sachs, and obviously due to all of the new transitions, let's just say, within the Star Wars cast, unfortunately, they got the kibosh as far as being able to bring any characters, whether they're A-list or, at my level, the side characters, into any of the comic books to make official canon. So that was a little disappointing because for me, I told Marvel, I said, look, the one thing that the fans love are variant covers. I said, so if you guys do that, I'm going to run with X amount of covers and I'm going to do this tour and basically be, supporting your comic book in-house. Including, Alaska and Hawaii and all over these places that we're going.
Right.
Well, that fell through. I had a couple of people come to me, one gentleman in particular who was so anxious to want to flesh out my Wikipedia. Again, like we talk about, a lot of the fans and just wanting to know the details or if they can contribute, being that passionate. What does Gekko's ship look like? What would his planet look like? What is his species?
Right.
So this one guy, he's from Maryland. He came to me and said, Tom, I would be honored to write a little, a one-off issue fan fiction comic of Gekko. You did such an amazing job with the small businesses. The fans love you. The charitable organizations, the 501st, Rebel Legion, Mandalorian Mercs inducted me as an honorary member. We were also involved in a lot of charitable organizations as well, raising money as we were for their causes. They do just such an amazing job in their local communities.
Absolutely.
So he had an illustrator from Romania, believe it or not, and a colorist from Brazil. So it's sort of been a worldwide effort. But I said, if you guys do it, I want to make sure that it's top notch. Whatever it costs, it costs. And they put together just a really high quality 16-page one-off issue with 4 variant comics that we'll be touring with, starting in Hawaii, actually, this weekend, April 10th. And then finishing up in Boise, Idaho, and that's going to be on August 23rd. Over 60 stops. You can find all the information at GekkoTheBountyHunter.com or Lair of the Gekko on Facebook. And again, the same deal applies. We have not gotten off the ground. We have stayed very grounded with the stores as a way of showing our appreciation that they all get 15% just in exchange for that simple little offer of a simple night at a hotel. It doesn't have to be Four Seasons or anything too foo-foo, as long as it's not the Motel 6 down right next to the truck stop.
Right.
But ultimately, that's been the same deal, and we're looking forward to hopefully doubling that number for them this year. And like I said, it's sort of a uncomfortable thing because, again, it was supposed to be just flanking a lot of the Comic-Cons. I was supposed to be just, with a lot of the B
Right.
guys, Tate Fletcher and Missy Rosas and
Yep.
Chris Bartlett, a lot of guys from the cast, where I would just been like an addition, like you see in those extra rooms
Yep.
at the Comic Cons, and I was going to do maybe about 20 or so. As nothing in my career really topped this in terms of the sci-fi genre. I've done a lot of television, but nothing to where the Comic Cons would have grasped a hold of me,
Right.
which is what would have happened. But because of COVID and because so many of the actors didn't want to be proactive in that regard, of course, whether it's the fear or the amount of grunt that you have to go through. I mean, in terms of the mileage, I put on 20,000 miles last year as far as going around the country twice. Gekko sort of took on another sort of being in and of itself. And one thing I've been telling a lot of people lately is that it's not so much now about the side character. For me, we obviously have a lot of issues right now going in on in our country. And the
Right.
one thing for me with two sons, 15 and 12, that I want to teach them, again, we're all, most of us are middle class. We don't maybe have $1 million life insurance policy behind us. But the greatest life lesson is to teach them, because we're hearing a lot of excuses right now in society, and to teach them the amount of success that you can have through even the smallest opportunity in our country, as opposed to pointing the finger and blaming other people. If you look within yourself, I'm an Italian American. I grew up in New York. My grandfather was in the CCCs. He was 4th Infantry in World War II. Didn't have much. But ultimately, I wanted to pass down to them the understanding that no matter what the rhetoric or the narrative is right now, it still goes back to creating an opportunity, sometimes out of the smallest, similar to those small businesses, to where I have so much respect for them because they don't make excuses. They get up every morning, again, like we mentioned, and they work hard. So the thing for me is I hope that Gekko, maybe in so many years, the greatest Star Wars story of all may not be within the universe, but it might be so much a documentary in terms of believing in yourself, working hard, and from that, a lot of good things will happen.
Absolutely. That's the American dream, right?
Correct. And again, I just feel, the narrative right now, I normally don't get too high on my horse or get up on a soapbox. But the narrative right now in the schools, my concern is that they're blaming people who are successful, and they're blaming people who are unacceptable. They're making excuses for those who are not successful.
Right.
And for me, it's just, I was second and third team on my football team. We had a great program in New York State. And if I could go back to high school again, and the coach came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to start at quarterback because we want to make sure that we spread the love here," I would tell him no. Again, the bar needs to still be set at the highest level to, again, even being a side character in Hollywood, I never minded until now. It's turned into sort of this participation trophy thing, to where I understand, we should all be about helping others. But at the same time, I just feel like there's this constant narrative of too much of a participation trophy, as opposed to rewarding everyone of all different parts of the universe for those who work hard. And I think that needs to be the constant, the common denominator in our country for many, many years to come. And I hope that it will be. But if anything, bringing my sons along on this trip, all we can do is control what we have in our own four walls. And this is just very important to me, because I think that's a very valuable lesson that's not only patriotic, but also at the same time very personal for me as a father.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and, it's important to me that they learn the value of hard work. And, having grown up in a family, I mean, I grew up with, for being in rural Mississippi, I mean, pretty well off but, my grandparents all started their careers as educators in Mississippi. Educators in Mississippi don't make a lot of money.
Right.
And educators nowhere make a lot of money, but in Mississippi, it's especially bad. But they all came from, they were all, their fathers were either farmers, dirt poor farmers, or
Even
preachers.
poorer
2 of them
preachers.
were preachers. And I mean, preachers were, back then were getting paid with chickens. So,
Yeah.
and, what they went through and what they didn't complain about it. They just did the hard work and made something of themselves.
Yeah, I had such a fortunate experience with my younger son driving through Mississippi last year, where we stopped in a little town that I'm sure the whole entire world knows, called Tupelo, and seeing Elvis's first house.
Yeah.
The same thing from the father to the son, and the mother as well, who he adored so much. But to see, how you come from something so small and so humble, and you build your empire, with hard work and
Yeah.
talent. And, those little stories throughout the country, we're actually going to be focused a little bit more on American history this time with the Lewis and Clark Ventures, which I'm just have been fascinated. I just finished their journals.
That's awesome.
But, you're inspired by those stories. And again, I think that we need to get back to that and understand that everyone is included in that understanding of work hard. And I'm going to be there to employ you. I'm going to be there, no matter what. There's not going to be any jadedness. It's got to go under that. And I can't sit there and point my finger at the people up at the top of the hill and say, they had it easier than me, or this person has it harder than me. I just don't think that's a great mentality. And I think that ends up segregating us as a society. So, to get more detail into that story, there were 25 bounty hunters at my same rank. And there was only one who stepped up and created an opportunity through enthusiasm and passion, and also for understanding the market. And again, I think that hopefully will be an inspirational story for many generations to come. But we're doing it firsthand. And most importantly, I'm just glad that, my sons could see that through my actions as opposed to just talking a big talk on the couch there.
Yeah. They say that's the way to teach things, right? Is through example.
Right. The actions, yes. A lot of people can talk. A lot of big talkers.
Yes. Especially in this world where everyone has a platform on social media.
Correct. Yes. Somebody just tweeted this morning. They said, a lot of people are tweeting. I don't know if they're necessarily helping charities out, but man, they're making it sound like they're virtue signaling left and right. It's like, look, you got to get out there, get your hands dirty. And then, obviously then you can go ahead and pat yourself there,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you've been making the rounds. I mean, not just the driving rounds last year, but you have been, like you said, on a lot of rooftops here lately. You've been doing a lot of interviews. So here's my question. What is one question that you wish that interviewers would ask, but they never do?
Oh, wow. That's very, very interesting. Oh, man. I think you got me there. I got to tell you, because I've been doing this for like a couple years. So I think they honestly have hit almost on every point. If anything, I think it would be to discuss my grandfather. I was raised with my mother. My parents, I had resentment for my dad when I was younger, but they just got married too early. So it wasn't my father's fault, or it wasn't my mother's fault. But my mother took us back to New York. She tried to save the marriage and try to work it out in Hawaii. But ended up moving back to New York with just my sister and I. My sister was a year older. I just have a one sibling. And my maternal grandparents, my grandfather was William Tagliaferri. And he was a member of the 4th Infantry. He was stationed down there at Fort Bragg, down south, before they ended up hitting Normandy Beach.
Wow.
But for me, he was just one of the greatest inspirations. If we talk about now, as far as, again, creating that opportunity, people saying, wow, you're doing this and you're doing that. When we look, again, at that generation, like you were talking about, down in Mississippi, when you look at the older generations, it really puts things into perspective in terms of how to have a stronger work ethic. Because for me, going back to the 80s, I wasn't drafted into an army. I mean, we literally were playing Nintendo and playing sports with my friends. So I guess the one thing that I would wish that people would ask would just, and they wouldn't know unless they study my IMDb bio, is just the close relationship I had with my grandfather and how much of an inspiration he was. Just because, again, when we look at that generation going through the 1930s, no matter where you were in the country, it was not easy unless you were part of the top 0.01%. And again, when you see that and when you know the stories that they go through, the men and the women of all races, obviously the genders, just God bless them all. And again, that I think puts a lot of things into perspective. They talk a lot now in terms of, and a lot of it has weight to it as far as, those going through a hard time. But it's hard not to question today's hard time versus if we truly educate ourselves and put things into perspective with that great generation.
That's true.
So I know you've been making the rounds to all these shops, but did you have an opportunity before things really shut down to do much on the con circuit?
Yes. So I had a couple. There was one in Stockton, California, Northern California near Sacramento. I was there with Eric Roberts. And then I did Pensacon, which was a great convention.
Yeah.
And again, we just, the chip fell exactly where it's supposed to be. We were going to be in a room with a lot of actors. I had, I got to, geek out at fellow actors, but they were from the 80s generation that I grew up with, after watching Entertainment Tonight, you'd watch the A-Team, or you'd watch, The Greatest American Hero. So I had a handful of agents. I told them I wanted to be independent. I wanted to pick from all different types of different conventions and take the best opportunities. I had about 25 cons lined up. I also had a chance to get over to Liverpool, of all places, in England. So I was taking full advantage. As soon as that bell hit on season 1, episode 1, I was off to the races doing podcasts, and I was having a lot of appearance agents reach out to me and saying, hey, again, you know where you stand. You're going to be, in the room with the Gamorrean guards and with the stormtroopers, Alan Austin from Empire Strikes Back. And I said, absolutely. They're going to take care of the flight. They're going to take care of the hotel. At that point, then they do give you a guarantee, which is always great, because at least, you're going to make a certain amount on each weekend. I got an agent in South America. They were going to take I had to be a little careful because they were getting a little too adventurous. They're like, yeah, we'll take you to Colombia and Brazil. I'm like, I want to come back with my head still on the top of my shoulders here. I had one member of the 501st. It's a funny story. They said, because they have all these COs, these commanding officers of the charitable organization, Star Wars organization. They're down in Colombia. And she called me. She's from Colombia. She said, who are you staying with? And I said, well, this guy told me to, he's going to put me up in his house. She goes, yeah. She goes, I got another friend of mine. You may want to stay over there. And I said, well, why? What's the problem? And normally you say, hey, well, this guy's kind of a, not really great, or this guy's not really this, He said, well, the other guy might be part of a cartel that may not be, and I'm just like, what the hell? I said, cancel the whole freaking trip. Are you kidding me? I said, it's one thing you say, hey, the guy maybe lives in a bad area of town. The cartel. I said, get that. I said, this is a freaking signing. I'm going to show up like the Three Amigos with Chevy Chase and Steve Martin, and I'm going to freaking get my head cut off. I said, the hell with that, But, oh, man, I had a nice little tour planned. And, again, all within the understanding of just knowing my place. And, again, I wouldn't trade I would trade in a New York Minute to not have COVID happen. But because of COVID, Gekko sort of took on, again, a certain level of popularity that was sort of unlike what would have happened. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yeah, no, we've gotten to see a few times. I know you did you did some stuff in Chicago with our buddy Rove from the Scarif podcast.
He's amazing. And we got another one this year, July 10th. It's going to be in the same little courtyard at Alley Cat Comics there, and that'll be on a Saturday. So, oh man, we had the best, the one great thing too, I'll tell you, down south, you guys have the best fried chicken with that white country gravy. I swear, I got to be careful now because I'm going to be 46. So it's like it starts packing on. But oh man, if you haven't tried a real Chicago deep dish, there's actually an app now, it's really pricey, but you can get food from all over the country. But if you have never tried a real authentic deep dish, anyone listening, highly recommended to even order it. They send them some of the major chains. They send them freeze dried all over the country.
Yeah.
But oh man, that deep dish will put you away. That you're going to take a nap. But man, it was heaven.
Yeah, we live pretty close to about 3 hours from New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans originally, and so every couple of years,
there, sure,
we'll get on Valentine's Day, King Cake will show up. Have one ship because it's just not the same if you don't get it there. I'd imagine pizza in Chicago is a little bit the same.
You can't beat New Orleans, I'll tell you, I'll go through it quickly, is beignets, the Banana Foster at the Commander's Palace, the muffalata, the shrimp po' boy, and then the best bread and butter pudding I ever had is a place called Court of Two Sisters, right in the Quarter.
Yep. Yes.
And oh my God, you can smell the butter from a mile away. It was just, I'll tell you, it's like Grandma's kitchen. Throughout the aroma was absolutely amazing. But they do food right. The only problem with New Orleans I have is you got to go at the right time of the year because humidity combined with having a full stomach is just not a good mix there.
Yeah, you just got to go. You got to go when it's cool enough.
Yeah, we live. Cold, we deal with the same thing here. We're right here on the Mississippi River, and we deal with that humidity, and it's
brutal.
Humidity
stuff.
And mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my God. So much history there. I took my son to the Lincoln Museum up in Springfield, Illinois. Okay. And oh my God, you talk about work back then. I think Lincoln was originally from Kentucky, and he was, they were like, I don't know if it was log or whatever he was doing, some kind of parts or whatever, that they would be on a raft and they would row down downstream from the down to the Mississippi to the Delta there, and then they walk back up to Kentucky. I was like, again, the same thing. You can't complain in this day and age when you start hearing those stories.
Right.
Yep. They would come. A lot of them came here and went back up the Natchez Trace.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I want to go. I want to look into that this time, because I believe in Tennessee, it passes Lewis, where Meriwether Lewis is buried. He's close by there, so I want to just pay my respects. That story, after hearing it from start to finish, was so tragic there.
Yeah.
And if y'all get a chance when you're doing the history stuff, don't pass up Natchez if you get a chance.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, certainly. Why? I mean, God, it's so rich in history down there. And one other spot I'd love to visit there is Vicksburg there. Pay our respects as well.
Yeah, we're really close to Vicksburg. We're about 45 minutes from Vicksburg.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that story in terms of how that all transpired on those days. I think it might have been, I don't know if it was an accident or whatever. It was somebody, it was like somebody stepped on a branch. It just alerted the whole thing. And then, of course, you had one of the most major battles of the Civil War there. But yeah, I love all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Natchez is the oldest city on the Mississippi River.
Wow.
And we had our tricentennial a few years ago, and
oh my God.
When there were so many, Natchez was a big kind of international city at the time. It was a big port city and all this. And so there were people from all over the country here. And when the Union Army rolled into Natchez, they just raised the American flag.
They were like, no battle here. Everybody was like, hello, please don't bomb our pretty houses. We'd like to keep them.
Sure. Oh, man. Yeah. I would love to see it. Yeah. Tupelo, that was the first time. It was my 50th state. Was last August was Mississippi there. So I'd love to explore it more for sure.
Wow. That is a lot of driving. So of all the states y'all drove through, which one... Okay, so some states you drive and they they kind of never end. But then there's a lot, but then sometimes they have super interesting things in them. So what was the most interesting thing y'all saw on your cross-country road trip?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been there before. Not this time was a little more dramatic because it was right through the fires during September and October. But the most beautiful continental state for me, with the back roads as well as the shore, is Oregon, believe it or not. I'll tell you, they've got those canopy tree-lined back roads, and the best. I'm not a big wino, but the Pinot Noir, their weather, with the rain, but they also have just these rocky, mystical beaches where they filmed one of our other favorites, which was Goonies in Astoria. But I just love the terrain there, and just the weather and the trees. That to me was probably the most beautiful. But again, the whole entire country, I'll tell you right now, we all hit certain ages, those who live in major cities. And I was raised in New York and I live in Los Angeles, but just getting out of Los Angeles County, I can't tell you how happy I am. So it doesn't even matter if my son was cracking up when we were in Iowa, because normally when you're 12 years old, you're driving through, you just want to get to the destination. And I'm going about 55, 65 in an 80. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I am just enjoying every moment going through the cornfields here, just because as you get older, you begin to appreciate it a lot more,
For sure.
Yeah, there's lots of cornfields up in Illinois. Drove through from Chicago from St. Louis to Chicago, and it was like corn.
Yes.
There's a barn.
No, and I know. And like I said, normally, you'd be like, well, what the heck am I doing? Let's just get there. But I'll tell you, with LA's congestion and New York's congestion and just the energy of these cities, it really is just so peaceful. I'm chomping at the bit. My big tour starts. We're going to be hitting the road heading towards San Antonio about June 15th. But I just can't wait. It's such a pleasure being on the road for me there.
Awesome. Well, that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so kind of back to Star Wars for a minute. Really before you got the role of Gekko, were you a big Star Wars fan prior to that, or?
Oh my God, without question. Oh, okay. Please. Yeah. What really geeked me out on the first day was the fact that I had the first original 12 figures and the Cantina playset in 1980.
Okay.
The one thing for me, what I've said in a few interviews, is just the fact that, not only Lucas was so ahead of his time and so ahead of the other sci-fi genre, sci-fi films at that time, but also one thing that also kicks out at you when you're a kid, it pulls at your heartstrings more than even the visual, is the music. So John Williams had a tremendous amount of inspiration for kids, because I feel like that you're more connected to maybe those chords when you're a kid, as opposed to even when you might be a full grown adult. So it was just such an impact for me. I had got all the original figures. Thankfully I wasn't one of those tragic stories where grandma or mom throws them out in the garbage. I have all the original figures there. But no, just a diehard. Entertainment Tonight actually did a feature on me before episode 1, because I had a life-size Han Solo and Carbonite. I had a film at that time I did with Miramax. It was Singapore's first internationally distributed film called That's the Way I Like It. I did a cheesy spin-off, if you can imagine, of John Travolta in this sort of fun little campy film. And but my publicist said, look, he said, nobody's really going to care about this film. It's probably going to go to the theaters for one weekend, and then it's going to go straight to video. But let's go ahead and have them go through your closet, because your Star Wars collection is amazing. So this was back in 1999. But a diehard fan, a collector. Wow. I think I might be the first true fanboy who actually got involved in the franchise there. But no, without question, I the one part where I sort of lagged was the Clone Wars and Rebels. I'm still kind of in the process of watching Rebels. But other than that, I mean, the original trilogy, I mean, my God, if there were VHS tapes, they would have been worn out. I mean, the amount of times that I watched those films.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure I wore out my VHSs. I was born in 1980, so the first one I really remember is Jedi.
Yeah. Oh man, I got to tell you, that was the first time where Luke saves the day on the skiff that I heard an applause in the theater, and I will never forget it. But I get to go back as far as Empire. To where, again, the one beautiful thing about watching that in the theater, and I don't know if you can recall, but the world was just bigger than life at that time. So when you're watching it, and you're watching the believability of the credibility of Harrison Ford and Fisher and Hamill and Billy D. Williams and McDermott and, of course, David Prowse and James Earl Jones, it just blows you away. I mean, it really does something to you that 40 years later, I mean, we're still talking about it, and people are still just as passionate about it. So it really is just one of those things that, I feel like, I mean, I hope that Hollywood still has a lot more tricks up its sleeve. It seems like they're getting pretty oversaturated and diluted, but it's only more of a compliment to Lucas and the magic that he created there, because, sometimes lightning doesn't even strike once. And with him and Spielberg and Zemeckis, they certainly did an amazing job.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of all their different films, that was what I meant.
Right, yeah.
So who's your favorite Star Wars? Like, as a kid, who was your favorite Star Wars character?
Well, I always split it between two. I thought Boba was obviously the coolest figure. And the one thing I always say now is it's such a great era right now of female empowerment. But for me, it was also about the male alpha. That's what I can connect to. And for that, there was no one other better than Harrison Ford between Indy and Han.
Absolutely.
To where it was just about taking command. The one thing that, I scratch my head now because of, sometimes the narrative is, why can't we coexist with strong women and strong men? Why do we have to, I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like they're emasculating a lot of these guys on screen. And it's like, I don't understand. You can have a strong Wonder Woman. I thought that Carrie Fisher stood up neck to neck, toe to toe with Ford. I didn't understand that, but we need to have strong men in our society as well. So for me, it was Harrison Ford, and that was the reasoning there.
Yeah, yeah. We actually have that conversation pretty frequently. It's like, okay, so yes, like I've got 2 daughters, like I'm all about girl power, but like you don't have to have wimpy guys in order to have compelling women. Like, we need examples for all of our children to learn how to be strong and brave.
Thank you. I mean, I really, and I'd like to believe the majority of women understand. I mean, they really want that backbone, the emotional backbone and the stronghold in obviously all the positive ways of being the breadwinner when you can. But even if you're not the breadwinner, to be able to have that fortitude to survive and to protect your family, I don't understand. But again, I think we're sort of divided in that there's many in power to where they think that maybe then they can step into power if they can emasculate or make submissive. But I'm like, well, that's the same thing that you didn't want as a woman. So why are we doing that? But again, who the heck knows? You never thought that we'd become like our grandparents, where we say, it's not like the good old days, but here we are saying it.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Never in a million years. I said, well, life is always going to be hard. I would have understood that, but not this today.
Yeah, it's a crazy world for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know how crazy it was, I have to say, until I got a Twitter account. And I'm
Oh
like,
no, yeah, it's
oh,
I'll tell you, if it wasn't for Star Wars, I say sometimes I remember over the holidays there when I thought Gekko was, I didn't know if he was going to get a second life. I was starting to fade out, and I was just, that's when I got the Lewis and Clark book. I got a book on Michael J. Fox, and I got to tell you, you shut that thing off, and it's probably one of the most peaceful and smartest things you can do. And just go ahead and dive into a good book, a good inspirational book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. But it really seems to be the way to go. Charles Barkley said something really brilliant. I posted briefly, but I have to be so careful nowadays. He said something really brilliant the other day, was that, the narrative right now is, and with the MSM is trying to divide us, and that's the other thing too. I have another conversation with my son's school the other day. I'm sorry, next week, because I'm just very disappointed in terms of feeling that the schools are adding to this segregation and sort of pointing the finger. And so for me, I mean, what frustrates me is that I wish that the powers that be would start using this word, and I talk about it often. It's called humanism or egalitarianism, which basically means we're all held accountable to the same standards, and at the same time, it's the effort to just bring us all together. But all of this, this is, these people are in this corner, these people are in that corner, and this gender's in this corner. It basically is going to continue to keep us segregated, and we're going to stay within our own circles, unfortunately, in my opinion. So I hope that will turn. I hope that there will be some kind of a peaceful revolt to say, hey, look, and it's got to come from the minority members, the leaders saying, hey, no, we got this all wrong. We have to just all come together as one in peace, with understanding that the only word we can keep using is human. Because I think if we keep, again, keeping score and keeping tabs, it's just going to keep getting ugly. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's all true. Yeah, we homeschool, so we don't get to have fun run-ins with our kids' school
I don't blame you. I had a situation a couple months ago where they, and again, I couldn't be more peaceful and wanting for just the best understanding for everyone. But they said, for our kids in this one video, to not see race, to not see gender is wrong. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I said, the fact that I grew up in New York as an Italian American, I said, look, we had our own discrimination as well. We grew up in a melting pot, but we were not taught to learn any of that. And I'm not ashamed to speak, vocally about that and feel that, this ideology is racist or sexist. But I think that the constantly separating, saying who's got it easy, who's got it hard, it's only separating us more. And I would love to see more of a unification from the school systems. Specifically, if a parent has that ideology, I respect them. I say, okay, well, that's how you feel. Just like Democrat or Republican. But when it's coming from the school and it's a one-sided narrative, I think that's room for concern for any parent. I wouldn't want them up there talking about Breitbart or a heavy-level right-leaning Fox,
Right.
narrative. I just want that balance of saying, hey, if you're going to introduce this to them, well, then at least show them the other side. Or how about this? Leave it up to the parents to tell them, what their ideology in regards to this should be.
Right.
Yeah.
But I really, that's one of the things I appreciated about older sci-fi was that it presented social commentary, but it generally showed you both sides.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't like this one's right. In fact, I actually have really appreciated, as far as a modern show doing that, is the Orville.
Yeah. McFarlane's great. I mean, even with Family Guy, I just hope, God forbid, they don't cancel him because, again, he riffs on everybody just like Don Rickles, and I think we need to protect comedy at all costs. But he's amazing. You bring up a good point. I don't mean to self-plug, but one of the passions of wanting to become an actor was to tell a story. It's not only, hey, I'm on television, hey, I'm doing a shoot 'em up scene on Prison Break, or I'm playing a thug on NYPD Blue. I just did a film. It was an African-American director from New York. And the reason I mention it is because I felt that more or less he was pretty neutral in his message. There's a film I starred in. It's called Anonymous Killers. It's currently on Amazon right now.
Awesome.
But basically, it's about the criminal system. And it basically leaves it to the viewer, not so much him shoving down your throat a certain agenda or a certain direction, left or right. But basically, the big controversy right now and the discussion, because there is validity on both sides, is that word privilege. And the one thing I love with this director, with this movie, is that he sort of presents it in a way of saying, hey, if I commit a crime, I don't come from a great area, Italian American, the mob, there's certain admiration we have for the mafia because they didn't only had so many opportunities at that time. But there's two ways that you can cut that. You can say, hey, look, the rules are still the rules. You go to jail. I mean, if you commit a crime, or hey, I understand why you might have done that because obviously you only had so much opportunity. But I love the fact, the way that he sort of presented this film with 5 different criminals, because I think that he left it open for the way, that the audience could judge whether or not they think it's just or not. And as opposed to, again, what I don't like, and I don't think any of us like, is shoving one side or the other down the viewer's throat there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, escapism shouldn't be too preachy.
There you go. Absolutely. Or
Yeah.
if it is, let it serve it up like a volleyball so the audience could decide for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, those sorts of things certainly have their place, but when you're watching something for the sheer escape of it, and then,
Right.
but the same thing that's on the news channel slaps you in the face,
Right.
it's,
No, let's have this
like I
conversation
said,
somewhere
we're
else.
turning to our grandparents and say, man, I wish they don't make them like they used to.
I know. Alas, I know. Every once in a while, I open my mouth and I hear my mother, and I'm like, wait a second. That wasn't going to do that.
Exactly. Who would have thought? I never would have thought in a million years. I thought we were going to be the coolest parents ever.
Oh, right. Yeah. I was going to be, I mean, I knew everything there was to be about being a parent before I had kids.
Yeah, right. There you go. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I was an expert. Yeah.
But knock on wood, I'm sure yours are healthy and well grounded, and I'm so grateful mine are too. They're 15 and 12 there, and that's the reason for this tour. For me, again, we don't come from a belief of the government needs to pay our way for college. This is for him. But the reason it's for him is that he's been self-sufficient. He's a straight A student, got accepted into extremely accredited prep school for UCLA called the Geffen Academy out here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
He's working so hard. So I want to take him along. And the one thing for me is to hopefully get him to that level of higher education and have less loans for him because, again, he really has a good head on his shoulders. It's one thing if they're complacent and they're, playing PlayStation every 2 seconds, but he really, when it's time for homework, I mean, I even felt bad yesterday. We had to do a COVID test for this Hawaii trip. And he's like, Dad, I got to get home. I got to knock out my homework. He's just such a great kid. I can't say enough about him. He's going to be with me at least for about 2.5 weeks, the first leg of the tour there.
That's awesome. It's so great to be able to share things with your kids.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially now, again, I mean, I don't blame them with the phones. Everybody's got their head on their phones. But the one great thing when you hit the road is you put that phone down, and we've got some really fun museums. They got the USS, oh God, what is it? It's down in Corpus Christi there, but it's this beautiful battleship there that they have, Lexington, the USS Lexington. And then we've got a couple Lewis and Clark museums, an art museum in Houston. We've got the Springfield. We're going to see Lincoln's tomb in Springfield, Illinois, and then do a little bit of the Art Institute of Chicago up there before he flies back. I didn't want to take up his whole summer because we're going obviously at a very, very fast clip. Nice.
So do y'all have a stop in Houston on your?
Yes, we do. We're going to be at DNA Comics, and that's going to be it's going to be on a Wednesday. Believe it or not, I've been so fortunate that a lot of the stores are taking me in for the weekdays. I wish every day could be a Saturday and Sunday, but that'll be at DNA Comics. And oh man, the 501st, their Legion down there is just so amazing. And whoever, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have been to Texas, but if you haven't, they've got a restaurant down there called Chewy's, and man, the best tres leche cake you can ever imagine. So we're looking forward to having some of that again. And oh my God, they got a queso dip down there too, which is amazing. But yeah, we've got four stops in Houston, San Antonio, Corpus Christi, Houston, and Dallas.
Oh wow! So you're really making the rounds in Texas.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, we may actually try to come that way instead. That's Merisha's dad's in Houston. So.
Yep.
Oh, perfect. As a matter of fact, by 5 stops, swinging back around in late August will be Amarillo there as well. But I would love to see you guys. Absolutely, please.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we'll even, my kids, I do a lot of cosplay with my kids. So maybe we'll even get them dressed up. That would be fun.
Please. Well, what I tell anyone who comes dressed up, they get a complimentary signed photo there. The other thing I do for the fans, a way of saying thank you. Some of these celebrities, they charge for selfies, but I don't charge anything. For me, it's an honor that somebody would want to take a photo with me. And again, they just add to the brand. So I'm so grateful. I just appreciate everyone's support of the comic just because that's hopefully going to be for the sun there.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I can't wait to read it here when it comes out shortly.
Thank you.
I did want to ask one other question as far as not really Star Wars, but outside of Star Wars, are there any other fandoms that you're just really, really hardcore about, or any that you would really like to be a part of one day?
That's interesting you say that. The one that comes second for me, and again, it's becoming few and far between now because I just feel like every writer and every director has their hand frozen by the studios, which is really upsetting me. I just want to make clear, if you're Spike Lee, Ava DuVernay, if you're Quentin Tarantino, if you're Scorsese, you need to fly with that pen. I don't want to tell you need to write me in, or you need to write this guy in or that guy. I felt like everyone needs to go back to whatever they want to say, your voice. I don't care what part of the country you come from. I want to hear your voice uncensored. This is America. We cannot have this to where, again, everything is becoming censored. But my point I'm getting at is that I loved Oscar season. I used to love, just watching all of the Academy Award nominees. So it wasn't necessarily a specific genre of film, but it was just when December came, I would be at the movie theater probably every other night. I'd get some of the screeners because I'm a member of the union. But it would just be watching the likes of, say, Daniel Day-Lewis or a new innovative film with a new creative script or ideology. I really just love those unique ones to where the studios, it's just once in a blue moon now, actually get to see a non-formulaic project to where it's thought-provoking. You can go back to, say, M. Night Shyamalan with The Sixth Sense, or even last year, it was a creepy one. It was called Midsummer a couple of years ago. I just love those pieces. And again, I love watching brilliant actors. I can't get enough of watching DiCaprio, Scorsese, of course, Tarantino as well. He's one, and Christopher Nolan, to where they don't need to have wait for the green light from the studio. They're still able to write what they want to write. But for me, my passion is directors and artists who can write and they can produce unapologetically without having to have their work censored. Because then what ends up happening is that you have that connection with the audience, as opposed to, again, all of this political correctness where we're worried who's offended, who's not offended. And I say that with 100% confidence because I'm Italian. And I love Seth MacFarlane. I love Zucker, Abrams and Zucker and Sopranos. I'm not going to sit here in March and say, hey, no, not all Italians are having a pastrami sandwich, and don't have their belly over their waist. Yeah, that's true, of course. It's only just a certain genre, but you got to show the world. It can't keep being the censorship where the only Italians on screen can be doctors and lawyers, and we're going to sweep the Jersey Shore under the carpet, or the guys from northern New Jersey that unfortunately exist. So I'd just like to see. That's my next little my other fandom. Of just uncensored cinema, and I hope we can get back to that sooner than later.
Absolutely.
I agree. We have so many wonderful creators, and it's a shame to see a lot of them handcuffed by studios. We've got a guy set up here. I don't know if you're familiar with Tate Taylor or not.
No, forgive me, no.
He made the movie The Help.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
He's local. He's here in Natchez, and they're in the process of really trying to get the industry going here in town.
Nice.
And they were supposed to film 4 or 5 movies here last year before COVID shut everything down. So,
yeah, it's such a great thing for me when they starting to outsource now to other states, because again, living in LA, everyone's living on top of each other. And
right.
The one thing I'd love to have, we have a beautiful condo here that we can sell for quite a good coin. But would be to have a nice house there. We don't know what state yet, but obviously a place with a lot more land and a nice man cave. That would be the dream, so we can keep all our cool Star Wars stuff and pop culture stuff all throughout that room.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I've got all my Star Wars stuff, but it's in my office, and so it's constantly fighting for space with work stuff. So
the whole dream would be to get a nice man cave with some nice display cases there, and have it really nice and neat with a nice screening room there.
Yep. Sounds like a good plan.
So have you done a whole lot? It sounds like you've done a pretty good bit. It sounds like the 501st has gotten really involved with showing up at your events.
Oh, yeah, without question. Like I said, going back to being inducted as an honorary member with all 3 major charitable organizations, I just can't tell you how grateful I am. We managed to raise over $3,000 last year. Combined with that was the Peter Mayhew Foundation, Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Aflac Cancer Research as well, with the Alabama Garrison 501st. We worked with them at the Atlanta Brick Company. I'm going to be at Atlanta again. Oh, my God. If anyone's a Lego fan, one of the coolest stores right outside of Atlanta is called the Atlanta Brick Company. And we're going to be there, I believe, August 8th. So we're going to be working with all those charitable organizations. I try to donate. I've got a bit of collection from other celebrities and such, but people will give me things along the way, whether it's Gekko items or original paintings of Gekko or Star Wars. And I'll go ahead and pay it. I'll let them know. I'll say, hey, thank you. Do you mind if I can add this to a raffle or two? We're doing it for Make-A-Wish. And they've been just so honored that I would be doing that. I've done that. It's just my other way of just saying thank you again for this attention. Make no mistake, as I mentioned, this is really now uncharted waters in terms of the popularity that this character has received. And I just can't do enough to say thank you for this opportunity, because it's been able to help me get through COVID. And also at the same time, it's such a beautiful feeling to help others.
Awesome. Well, that's really great. I mean, it sounds like you've got some exciting things going on. I know I've been following you on Twitter for a while, and so it's always interesting to see what's the latest thing we're doing today. Because we have 5 grandparents in their 80s here, so we've kind of been living under a rock until they all got vaccinated, and so it's been fun to see. It's like, oh look, people doing things and going places, living vicariously through people traveling around and seeing people.
Hopefully not biting off a little more than I could chew with Florida. I am going to go ahead, because this is taking up the majority of the year with this tour. I'm starting a film called Deceived, and I'm heading down to Miami, Fort Lauderdale area to film that May 9th to the 20th. So I'm excited about that, but they're going all in. I mean, we're a lot of the major studios will have all their COVID testing early in the morning, but this is a little bit lower budget. So, we're going to have to just throw caution into the wind and, just hope for the best. But I feel like, with the 20,000 miles, I feel like I'm one of those that have been asymptomatic. I was nervous on the first leg of the tour last year, but I just feel like if I got it, if I would have gotten it, I probably got it already. We just took the test. I got a negative just yesterday. But look, I mean, we got to live life too. It's everyone's got to make their own decision. But also for the economy, we need to just do what we got to do in order to survive. And also just try to be still practice our distancing and hygiene, but we also got to get to work.
Yeah, and as we've kind of been having the same conversations. It's like, okay, can't do this forever. Gotta figure out a way to get back to life as normal, because gotta go see people and do things, and we gotta, like you said, gotta get the economy back.
Right. And I'm ready to go back to cons.
I had a lot of friends who did get it, but I mean, they're still around. I mean, it was just they had it was not fun, but they were able to fight through it there.
Yeah. I'm ready to go back to cons.
Yes,
we usually do 4 or 5 a year sometimes, and we haven't done one in a year and a half now.
Yeah.
I know my friend Daniel Logan, he played Boba Fett there. They got one in Nashville, I think. I think it's this weekend coming up. So, but I don't know if I want to personally. As far as as a fan, as a customer, I want to go. But the one thing I love is just having this intimate time where just having one specific special day, as opposed to competing in a room with 30 other guys plus Chris Evans or Chris Helmsworth in the other room. You're it's going to be tough to even come up for water. For air. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I kind of like this whole dynamic of having one special day that's targeted to where they don't have the customer doesn't have to pay admission and can just have a special day within the comic there. But we'll see. The next step is either we might fade away from it. We'll see what happens with the comic, or Geeky Tiki's. This might be the first licensed product of Gekko. They're pitching to Lucasfilm to see if they can do an exclusive with a limited number of 1,300 Tiki mugs. So that would be really cool.
Awesome.
To tour with that there as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, is there anything else like you want to pitch or mention or anything before we kind of
definitely let everybody know where they can find your schedule. And
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Just the schedule. I appreciate everyone's support along the way. We have got a couple of stops in Tennessee, a stop in Georgia. We've got about 4 stops in Florida, one in Alabama there. So we'll be all over the area, one in Little Rock. Appreciate everyone's support. Again, GekkoTheBountyHunter.com or Lair of the Gekko on Facebook. Instagram is Dominic Pace 1, and then Gekko the Hunter on Twitter. But just appreciate you guys. I hope you and your family are safe. And it'll be great to see you guys at one of the appearances there. Hopefully maybe either Houston or Bama there if you guys can make it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to try. And I think Roe's still trying to get me to come up to Chicago. So
Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna be a lot of fun. He whipped out his whole tape deck there. As you know,
Oh,
he
yeah.
did a whole show and had the guys from Rebel Force Radio come out and WSTR Media and also Rebel Base Card. It was just a whole media frenzy. It was a lot of fun. And it was actually raining, but we were dancing in the rain. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right,
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking with you, getting to hear, all about, your Star Wars experience. And, it's always enjoy hearing people talk about their grandparents. We're real attached to ours around here. So
absolutely.
it's always
Absolutely.
great.
Oh, my best to everybody, all your listeners again. Hopefully everybody stays safe. And I hope to see you guys soon. We'll be going hardcore from this Saturday all the way to September 1st. So appreciate everyone's support. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on.
for coming, and thanks for everything that you're doing. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for this episode of Coruscant Radio Underground. You can find us online at crew_podcast at CRU_podcast. You can drop us a line at CoruscantRadioUnderground@gmail.com. And as always, remember to check out our podcast as well as the rest of the Red 5 podcast family at red5network.com or at Red5Network on Twitter. And until next time, may the Force be with you.